The shocking truth about King David's life revealed, a journey of faith and betrayal. Few knew what truly happened that night. Under the cloak of darkness, a lone figure climbed the hill of Bethlehem. In the shadows of the ancient olive trees, whispers floated like fog, cloaking the ground where the great King David once trod. What secrets lay buried in the heart of this legendary ruler? Long ago, in the rustic hills of Judea, David was not just a shepherd boy. He was a man tormented by the weight of prophecy and the glory of kingship. Chosen by God, anointed by Samuel, he danced before the ark with wild abandon. But with every triumph came a shadow, lurking just outside the firelight. His enemies plotted and schemed, driven by jealousy and fear. Many would not survive his path to the throne that he brought down giants with a single stone. Yet, in those same hands, he would wield a sword of broken dreams and betrayal. There was the moment he gazed from the rooftop, his heart pounding, when his eyes caught Bathsheba, the beautiful woman who would entwine his fate forever. Their union was not born of innocent love, it was stained with lust and deceit. A child born of their forbidden act would change everything, forcing David to confront his own darkness. Feelings of pride and sin twisted in David's chest like a thorny vine. He sent Bathsheba's husband, Uriah, to his death, weaving a web of lies so intricate. Gasps of horror echoed through the kingdom as the truth threatened to spill. How far would one go to protect their crown? Was he still the beloved of God after such treachery? Questions swirled, doubts gnawed at his very soul. Could he ever redeem himself after such abhorrent actions? And then, a prophet appeared. Nathan came forth, bold as a lion, to unveil the king's sins. As David's facade crumbled, the weight of his actions pressed down like a boulder. Those dark nights of sleepless regret left a scar deeper than any sword could cut. The kingdom murmured, voices clashed, and a fevered tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. What lay ahead for this flawed man? Could his heart, once so fervent, reconcile the love of God and the shame of betrayal? As the pages of his story began to turn, a question hung heavy between the lines, unanswered and haunting. Would King David ever find redemption worthy of the crown he wore? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. In the quiet moments following Nathan's rebuke, King David found himself wandering through the palace gardens, his heart heavy with remorse. The air was cool, and the scent of blooming flowers surrounded him, yet he felt only the bitter taste of his sins. Each petal that fell whispered the echoes of regret, as if nature itself mourned the weight of his choices. David sank down on a stone bench, its surface rough against his palms. There he sat, lost in a mosaic of memories of the songs he'd sung beneath the night sky, of battles won with courage, and of laughter shared with his children. Yet now, all those glimmers of joy seemed piercingly dim, overshadowed by the grievous act that had reshaped his life. "You are a man after God's own heart," whispered a voice in his conscious depths, a reminder of his calling. But that voice now felt tarnished. How could he have strayed so far from that beautiful proclamation? Had ambition and desire clouded his vision to the righteous path he once tread with resolve? The sound of footsteps drew him from his internal struggle. Absalom, his son with striking features and a fiery spirit, approached, concern etched across his face. "Father, you look troubled. Have the matters of the kingdom weighed too heavily?" he asked, his tone infused with youthful eagerness to confront complexities he barely understood. David forced a smile, but his heart could not muster the strength to disguise the turmoil within. "A father knows when darkness creeps into the heart, my son. I have wandered far from the light," he confessed softly, mindful of the vulnerability he displayed. The truth unraveled between them like a thread, tying the bond of father and son in fragile honesty. Your strength has always been in your faith, father. You've faced giants, you can confront this, Absalom urged, unaware of the depth of the ruin that encased his father's spirit. David's gaze shifted toward the horizon, where the sun began to dip beneath the hills, painting the sky in shades of regret. But even as he pondered, the seeds of unrest brewed within the kingdom. Murmurs circulated like wildfire. How could a king, chosen by God, sully the throne with blood and deception? They whispered in hushed tones. And that idea planted seeds of rebellion amongst those who coveted power. In the distance, David could hear the faint clatter of swords and shields being sharpened, hints of an uprising that threatened to unravel everything he had built. Hushed whispers turned into clamors, and loyalty began to fray like a worn tapestry. His heart sank, knowing it was his own hands that had tilted the balance toward chaos. Father, you have the favor of the Lord. When you remember his promises, you stand taller than any adversary. Absalom's voice broke through David's reverie, seeping into the dark corners of his despair. Was it possible that these words carried the hope he so desperately sought, but doubt lingered like smog over his thoughts? He might have been anointed, yet his failures loomed larger than his faith. What good is a king without integrity? David murmured, almost to himself. He longed for the melodies of his harp to restore peace to his heart, yet the strings felt heavy with his sins, and so, a profound silence descended upon the garden. The choice presented itself starkly before him, to confront the shadows of his actions or allow them to dissolve into the chaos that surrounded him. As night fell, cloaking him in uncertainty, David stood up, resolute for a moment against the tides of despair. He recalled the words of the Psalms he once wrote, verses filled with yearning for redemption and hope, a contrast to the desolation he felt within. With every step he took back toward the palace, he was met with yet another question lingering in the air, a mystery that would demand an answer. Could a heart burdened by sin still grasp the hand of grace? As the moon cast a silver sheen over the palace, David found his way back, each step heavy with contemplation. He entered his chambers, where the familiar scents of sandalwood and myrrh could not lift the weight upon his chest. The walls, adorned with tapestries that told tales of glory, now felt like silent witnesses to his fall from grace. David sank to his knees upon the cold floor, a humble position that reminded him of the shepherd he once was. Prayers spilled from his lips, a mixture of anguish and yearning. "O Lord, have mercy," he cried, the echo of his voice reverberating against the walls like a reminder of his isolation. "How far I have strayed." And in that moment of raw honesty, a whisper filled the stillness, not unlike the rustling of leaves, a gentle beckoning. "Return to me, and I will restore you." The promise lingered in the air, a balm for his wounded spirit, yet apprehension grasped him. Could restoration truly follow such a fall? Suddenly, a shadow crossed the threshold of his chamber, and it was Nathan, the prophet, whose eyes held wisdom gained from divine insight. The burden of David's sins was palpable, yet Nathan carried no condemnation, only concern. "King David," he began, his voice steady, "the repercussions of your act will ripple through generations. But God seeks a truly contrite heart." David met Nathan's gaze, and in it, he saw an opportunity not to escape justice, but to embrace it. "How can I cleanse myself of this abomination?" he asked, each word weighted with the gravity of his actions. The conversation felt sacred, as though a fragile thread of hope was being woven between them. Nathan spoke, grounding the conversation in fatigue and faith. "Consider not only your actions, but the hearts of those they affect. A kingdom held by honor is stronger than one held by fear. Your turmoil cannot simply be wiped away. It must be faced." The conversation turned then to Absalom, the son who bore both David's blood and his fiery spirit, a spirit David had inadvertently kindled towards rebellion. "What of my son?" David's voice faltered, a father's fear igniting anguish. "Is he bound to my sin?" Nathan shook his head gently. "Absalom is a path unto himself, influenced by what he sees. Guide him, O king. Before this spiral deepens, teach him of mercy and truth, lest he feel the weight of your choices." With this counsel, hope flickered within David. He understood that while his actions bore heavy consequences, the future was still unwritten. Yet uncertainty loomed like dark clouds on a windy day. He needed to confront Absalom, not as a king ruling over a subject, but as a father pouring truth into the heart of a son who was hungry for justice. A whisper of rebellion stirs in the kingdom, Nathan. My enemies gather like vultures. But my heart aches for my own blood, David lamented, wrestling with the duality of being king and father. Choose your battles wisely, David, Nathan advised. Elevate your heart over the noise of ambition and power. In this reflection, may you find the heart of God that once was your refuge. The plan is not yet fulfilled. As Nathan left, David felt a glimmer of intent igniting within him. There was inevitably a storm approaching, yet he began to understand that the way through chaos necessitated a return to the heart of his faith. He had woven his own troubles, but perhaps, through humility and guidance, a path to son and kingdom could also be retraced. In the depths of night, moments passed like stretching shadows, and with each breath, David pondered the uncharted waters ahead. Would his quest for redemption bear fruit, or would the seeds of mistrust and treachery sprout before him? The darkness felt thick, yet within it lingered the flicker of possibility. The question now lingered like the aroma of incense in the air: was the bond of a father strong enough to bridge the chasm created by his own failings? The dawn broke with soft hues of orange and pink, illuminating the rugged hills surrounding Jerusalem. For David, the light held both promise and foreboding as he prepared to meet Absalom. His heart moved in rhythm with the dawn, a mixture of expectation and dread. Rising from his slumber, he dressed slowly, each piece of royal attire feeling heavier than the last. Stepping outside his chamber, he caught sight of the courtiers whispering in corners, their eyes glancing toward him with a mixture of reverence and worry. What have they heard? He questioned silently. The court was alive with rumors weaving tales about his faltering strength, about the loyalty of his people waning like the moon. Drawing a deep breath, he sought the garden, a sanctuary once rife with the joy of creation. The fragrance of blooming flowers mingled with the chill of morning dew, a poignant reminder of the beauty he had taken for granted. He knelt beside a patch of violets, their tenacity resonating with his own turbulent spirit. Could he nurture such a bond with Absalom? Time seemed to hold its breath in the stillness. The meeting would be fraught. His son, filled with righteous anger, had betrayed not only him but had begun to rally support for his cause, claiming the throne. David couldn't shake the sensation of standing at a crossroads, pulled by fatherly love and the weight of kingship. His heart felt fragmented, torn between his son's yearning for justice and the shadows of his own transgressions. As the sun reached its zenith, casting warmth over the land, David called for Absalom. The air held a tension that crackled like a thunderstorm. When Absalom arrived, his eyes, once filled with admiration, now seethed with indignation. The resemblance between them was undeniable, yet they stood on opposite shores of a widening river. "Father," Absalom began, his voice steady but laced with concealed fury. "You have lost the favor of the people. They see your weakness as a king, and much worse, as a father." David, steadying his breath, chose to listen. "My son," he replied gently, "I know that I have erred. But I am here to acknowledge my failings. Can we not speak freely and seek a path that honors both our hearts?" A flicker of surprise showed in Absalom's eyes, quickly replaced by ire. "You speak of paths, but your actions have led us to this moment. Your sin has tainted the kingdom. You claim to love, yet you have thrust upon us the consequences of your mistakes." Each word was a sharp dagger aimed to pierce the paternal veil David had wrapped around himself. The heaviness of David's heart deepened, grappling against the bitter truth woven through Absalom's words. "You speak wisdom, son. But do not let my failures harden your heart against the love that still exists between us. You can either let it drive you toward blind vengeance or towards understanding and healing." For a heartbeat, silence enveloped them. The world outside continued, oblivious to their pain. Absalom's anger faltered as curiosity edged into his demeanor, a threefold mix of confusion, hurt, and lingering love. Yet the shadows of betrayal still loomed large. David knew he couldn't shield Absalom from the storm of their plight, but could he offer him something more profound than his kingship? A father's admission of his shortcomings and a sincere desire for reconciliation. Do not let the sins of the past dictate your future, Absalom. You have the power to forge a new way, even amidst the ruins, David urged, sensing a moment of hope amidst tumult. His heart ached for his son's trust, the kind that he had recklessly squandered. Absalom shifted, pondering his father's words, the storm within him raging and receding. You speak of forgiveness, yet you wield power without acknowledging the burden it carries. What if we cast aside the burdens, even if only for a moment? Could we not seek a deeper understanding? David implored, a flicker of vulnerability entering his voice. But in the distance, murmurs of dissent swelled, followed by the clamor of a gathering crowd, eyes filled with expectation and ambition. Absalom straightened, dark resolve hardening his expression. The seeds of rebellion were germinating, and the soil of their ancestral trust was eroding. You cannot now expect fealty when you stand upon the ashes of your own missteps, Absalom declared, thick with an unyielding resolve. As he turned to leave, a part of David whispered a dying plea. Absalom. But the winds carried his voice away, lost amidst the burgeoning storm of vendetta. The kingdom was teetering on the edge, a delicate balance of loyalty and betrayal, father and son, love and anguish. David watched Absalom walk away, a chasm widening between them, filled with shadows of hurt and misplaced ambition. Could this be a defining moment in their relationship, a precursor to a greater fracture? As the sun dipped below the horizon, questions loomed larger than answers. In the face of betrayal, how does a heart mend? And can a father's love withstand the storm of his own making? The twilight cast long shadows across the land, the air thick with unspoken truths and unresolved tension. David stood alone in the garden, the soft rustle of leaves echoing the turmoil within his spirit. As the stars began to pierce the darkening sky, each flicker seemed to represent the hearts of his people, once bright with loyalty, now flickering with doubt. He remembered the words of Nathan the prophet, the truths laid bare before him like a vast ocean threatening to swallow him whole. You are the man, Nathan had proclaimed, naming the sin that hung like a shroud over his reign. David's mind reeled back to that moment. Had his heart been truly contrite, or had pride sewn scales over his eyes? The weight of kingship bore heavy upon his shoulders, and within him, the battle between humility and hubris raged. As night deepened around him, David felt an inexplicable pull to the ancient hills that cradled Jerusalem. Perhaps there, with the moon illuminating the paths of the ancients, he could find clarity. He stepped lightly through the garden, his mind adrift in memories, his rise from shepherd to king, the melodies he once composed in the fragrance of wildflowers, and the overwhelming love he held for his sons. What had he become? He mused as he reached the crest of a hill, gazing out over the sprawling city. The golden glow of torches flickered in the distance, the riots of passion igniting around Absalom's gathering throng, mingling with the loyalists still clawing at their faith in their king. David's heart thumped against his ribs, a wild bird seeking escape from its cage. He dropped to his knees upon the cool earth, the familiar felt blanket of prayer enveloping him. "O Lord, hear my lament," he begged, his voice trembling with vulnerability. "Have I buried my dreams beneath the weight of my sins? Restore within me a steadfast spirit. Lead me away from pride, and toward reconciliation." In that silent confrontation with God, unshackled sorrow welled within him. Visions of Absalom's face, youthful and vibrant, intertwined with shadows, darkened by betrayal and longing. David recalled the moments of joy they shared, laughter echoing in halls that now felt desolate. "What can I do to restore what has been broken?" he pleaded into the emptiness, tears washing through the hard edges of despair. And then, amid his solitude, a song of remembrance stirred in his heart, an echo of psalms birthed from deep anguish. He whispered the words, seeking shelter in their promise, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." Each syllable was a plea for guidance, a desire to understand the deeper threads of hope that might still weave their fractured relationship back together. The dusk faded, yet was not without its revelation. In those quiet moments, the truth began to emerge, a clarity severing the ties of doubt, as if the Lord was pulling back the clouds that had shrouded his vision. David realized that true kingship lay not merely in the throne but in the heart's capacity to nurture forgiveness and the grave responsibility to guide, yet how could he lead through this storm? The threads of intrigue and loyalty were slipping through his fingers, and each day found him further estranged from Absalom. The kingdom swayed precariously on the edge of a dagger or a soft word, and David wondered if redemption could indeed bloom amidst betrayal. Rising, he felt a newborn determination burning within. He would not abandon Absalom to the winds of vengeance. A peace hung over him, fragile yet defiant. The voice of God stirred within him, urging action beyond mere supplication. I must seek him out once more, showing the depth of my heart's sorrow. As he made his way back to the palace, a new question lingered in the night air, filling his thoughts with unsettled trepidation. If reconciliation is sought, can the past be a teacher without becoming a chain? And can love endure through the fiercest struggles, or does it falter amidst the fray? As dawn broke over the city, casting delicate hues of pink and gold across the horizon, David stood at his window, the chill of the morning air seeping into the stone room. Before him lay the kingdom he had fought so hard to build, yet it felt like a house of cards on the brink of collapse. The sun rose with a promise of a new day, but David's heart was shadowed by the tumult of his thoughts. In the silence of the early morning, David's mind wandered back to Absalom. He saw the boy who once played at his feet, all laughter and mischief, growing into a man whose beauty was only rivaled by his ambition. The son who had celebrated victories at his side now stood against him, and the sharp division between them pierced deeper than any sword. Lord, how did it come to this? David whispered, the words barely audible as they escaped his lips. Each day of indifference and avoidance bore the weight of unseen scars, both on the father and the son. He recalled a time when he had taken Absalom into his arms, imbuing him with stories of courage and honor, the wisdom of a father glowing in each tale. Yet now, those same stories echoed hollow in his mind. With resolve swelling within him, David turned to seek counsel among his most trusted advisers. To gather wisdom felt both daunting and necessary. As he entered the hall where counsel was oft given, the air thrummed with uncertainty. Faces turned toward him, a tapestry of loyalty and apprehension woven into their expressions. Your Majesty, began Ahithophel, a sage known for his piercing insight. The realm feels the tremors of your son's ambition. There are murmurings of allegiance shifting, and loyalty is tested. We must act before he draws too many into his fold. The cautious tone of the council was thick with urgency, each word tinged with the fears of a kingdom unraveling. David nodded but felt a profound heaviness anchor his heart. What would you recommend? To send out soldiers? To strip my own son of power? Would such actions not sever the already frayed bonds of our family? The murmurs of agreement coursed through the assembly, but David's expression remained steadfast, his mind wandering back to the notion of redemption. What did it mean to be a father? Was it to wield authority or to embrace vulnerability? The many roles he played weighed heavily upon him: king, warrior, and now, a father on the brink of losing his son. Your Majesty, a younger advisor attempted, confronting Absalom may yield desperation or stir anger, but if you do not act, the throne may be lost without an iron hand to protect it. The words of caution echoed, but as they fell upon David's ears, they felt like shackles meant to bind him into a course of action that seemed increasingly foreign to him. David's heart wrestled with the gravity of his choices. To go against Absalom was to sever the last thread of hope, and yet to ignore the threat could spell ruin. Do any of you know where Absalom is? His voice broke through the tumult of opinions, a fragile branch reaching out into a storm. The silence that followed felt laden with weighty consequence. That I have heard he moves among the people, gathering support, Ahithophel replied hesitantly. His charm deceives many. They see a man of promise in him, a son who brings hope of change. The truth cut through David's heart like a dagger. Could such a change come at the cost of their love? Was it indeed true that one man's vision could unravel the dreams of another? As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the vibrant walls of his palace, David recognized the deepest conflict moored within him. Was he a king first, or a father? Could they coexist without one extinguishing the other? The question tethered him to uncertainty as he contemplated reaching out to Absalom, to lay bare the fear and regret intertwined in his heart. Perhaps it shall be a journey to understand him before any wall goes up between us, David murmured softly, the decision solidifying in the quiet folds of his mind. Yet, the lingering question remained, how does one navigate the treacherous waters of family? Loyalty without losing the very essence of love that binds them? As the sun reached its zenith, illuminating the vastness of Jerusalem, David stepped out onto the palace terrace, feeling its stones warm beneath his feet. He gazed across the bustling streets below, where merchants cried out for the attention of potential buyers and children played near the riverbanks, their laughter echoing like a balm to his troubled spirit. The life of the city thrived unknowing of the turmoil steeping within its king. With each passing moment, David wrestled with the newfound resolve to approach Absalom. Yet the shadows of doubt quickened their dance in his heart. What if this journey only widened the chasm between them? His thoughts spiraled as he descended from the terrace, his mind a whirlpool of memories of happier days, playing in the fields, learning the art of the harp, and forging bonds forged in laughter. Determined to seek clarity, David sought out Nathan, the prophet whose words once guided him through his darkest hours. Nathan's wisdom had proven invaluable time and again, and in this moment, it felt imperative to gain insight from the divine. The prophet often spoke of God's will woven into the fabric of their lives, but what threads were now unraveling? As David entered Nathan's dwelling, the air was thick with the scent of spices, and the flickering flames cast shadows that danced upon the walls. "Nathan," David implored, "what must I do? My son stands on the precipice of rebellion and my heart aches with the weight of family and kingdom. Is there a vision that the Lord holds for us in this turmoil?" Nathan looked at David with deep understanding, his gaze piercing yet kind, as though he could glimpse the pained soul within the king's heart. "The Lord sees all, David. He sees the love you have for Absalom, a love that stands against the enemy of ambition and rebellion. Seek the truth within your heart. It may lead you through the valleys of despair." These words held resonance, echoing with the reality that sometimes the answers sought in the depths of turmoil lay buried within. David pondered Nathan's insight and asked, what if there is no clear path? What if my efforts only drive him further away? Nathan paused before speaking, drawing on the wisdom bestowed upon him. True reconciliation is born of vulnerability, not from the might of arms. Consider your journey not as an act of confrontation, but as one of revelation. How can you convey the lesson of love amidst this storm? With new perspective washing over him, David felt a flicker of hope ignite. Perhaps my pain can meet him where he is. Perhaps I will not merely speak but listen. Resolute, he felt in that moment the true weight of stewardship, not just of a kingdom but of a son in turmoil. "That I will seek him out," David declared, the determination in his voice igniting his spirit. "Not as a king, but as a father, standing where I now stand, confronting the river of emotions that separates us." Yet, beneath this sense of purpose lay the unease of uncharted waters. How would he reach Absalom? Would the son who had turned against him, once filled with dreams, be open to the silent cries of a father? David leaned against the doorframe, eyes gazing at the distant hills, uncertainty gnawing at him. As he departed Nathan's home, the question lingered heavier than before: what bridges can be built when trust has been bruised, and does the burden of a kingdom overshadow the plea of a father's heart? As David walked through the streets of Jerusalem, the vibrant rhythms of life around him felt alien, almost muted. The weight of his mission pressed heavily on his shoulders, each step a silent prayer amid the bustling crowds. He recalled Nathan's counsel, and with it, an ache within him deepened, a longing not just for reconciliation with Absalom, but also for understanding the true nature of their relationship. He meandered towards the gates of the city, where the sounds grew louder, a cacophony of coexisting hopes and struggles. Farmers argued over grain prices, while a band of musicians played lively tunes, yet the music seemed to fade into nothingness amid David's turbulent thoughts. What did it mean to be both a king and a father, and could the two roles coexist amid strife? Arriving at the outskirts of Jerusalem, David noticed a gathering. A crowd had formed around a storyteller poised to share tales of old, the deeds of their ancestors, the mighty battles, the struggles and triumphs that summoned tradition and memory. Curiosity drew him closer as he listened intently. The storyteller recounted the painful tale of Jacob and Esau, of love and enmity entwined within the fabric of brotherhood, where reconciliation came only after years of hardship. The story resonated deeply, challenging David to reflect on his relationship with his son, as well as the scarred history that divided them. Just as Jacob sent gifts ahead of him to appease his brother, the storyteller narrated, he humbled himself before God, seeking to mend the rift born of rivalry. David's heart raced. Here lay a path he could explore. Perhaps he too could offer olive branches, gifts born from love, attempting to acknowledge the wrongs that had fueled the fire between himself and Absalom. In that moment, clarity began to crystallize within him, revealing layers of affection that had been buried beneath pride and misunderstanding. But doubts lurked in the corners of his mind. Was he merely setting the stage for a greater tragedy? Would his attempts at peace only end in rejection? The crowd began to disperse, and as the last echoes of the storyteller's voice faded, David remained rooted in thought. He had heard Nathan's wisdom, embraced the tale he had just heard, yet here he stood, confronted not just by the deeds of the past but the uncertainty of moving forward. As twilight crept in, casting a veil over the city, David turned towards the landscape stretching beyond the walls of Jerusalem. The hills were shrouded in a soft, dusky glow, whispering promises of both danger and hope. His heart stirred with an unsettling realization: this was uncharted territory, and the path he must navigate was fraught with potential peril, both political and emotional. He could envision the potential for abandonment, for further division, if Absalom rejected his approach. The specter of betrayal loomed, but so did the possibility of a renewed bond. With each beat of his heart, he felt the weight of the question coursing through him: how can one man seek to heal a broken relationship when the very fibers of trust have been frayed, and can a father's love truly withstand the tides of ambition and bitterness? David stood at the edge of the city, his mind awash with the stories of old, yet tethered to his present reality, where the shadows of his legacy loomed large. The sky above was a deep indigo, speckled with stars that seemed to twinkle with the wisdom of ages. Each glimmer whispered secrets of countless lives woven into the destiny of his people. He had once been a shepherd, a warrior, and now a king burdened with the weight of his own choices. The tales of his ancestors lifted him one moment, yet the implications of each story pressed heavily upon him the next. Lost in reflection, David began to walk again, allowing the quiet streets of Jerusalem to cradle his thoughts. Soldiers passed him at intervals, their faces a mix of duty and reverence. They had seen him at his greatest and watched as he stumbled through sorrow and triumph alike, yet in their eyes tonight, he saw curiosity and trepidation, qualities that lay dormant in his own heart. What did they see in him? A ruler? A father? Could they sense the inner turmoil that filled the king with doubts? As he stepped closer to the temple, a soft song floated through the air. It was an old hymn, one he had sung as a child, echoing a time when faith felt pure and uncomplicated. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. The words seemed to beckon him, pulling him towards the altar he had visited countless times, a sacred place that had witnessed the tumult of his life. There, amidst flickering lamps and the scent of offerings, he knelt in humble submission. O Lord, he whispered, grant me wisdom to understand the path before me. How do I reach my son, whom I love yet have wronged? Is it too late for our bond to be restored? David sat in the stillness, surrounded by the reverent hush of worshippers offering their prayers. In this moment of solitude, he felt the presence of God envelop him, as if the divine was leaning in, attentive to the turmoil in his heart. A thought emerged from the depths of his soul: perhaps to confront his past, he must first embrace the very shame that had held him captive. Memories rushed back, each misstep, each battle waged within his family had a lesson to impart. He recalled the moments of joy shared with Absalom, the laughter echoing through the corridors of his palace before the shadows of conflict intervened. There's beauty in love and bonds forged in the fabric of shared experiences, moments too precious to be remembered only as sources of pain. A flicker of hope ignited within him. If the stories of Jacob and Esau illustrated that enmity could turn to love over time, could there not be a similar hope for him and Absalom? But he thought of the wounds, raw and festering, too. Would his own efforts to mend their relationship be perceived as genuine, or would they be seen through a lens of past grievances they had both been too proud to acknowledge? With the flicker of understanding came an unsettling fear. Could the dream of reconciliation overshadow the reality of a confrontation that may lead to more pain? Could he hold steadfast in his belief that love had the power to conquer even the deepest divisions? As dawn approached, coloring the horizon with the promise of a new day, David rose from his prayer. He knew he could no longer dwell in the shadows of uncertainty. A journey into the depths of truth beckoned him, not just for himself but for his son as well. As he glanced toward the rising sun, urging him to set forth, a question lingered on his heart. Can redemption truly rise from the ashes of past mistakes, or is the cost of healing sometimes too great for even a father's love to bear? As the dawn broke over Jerusalem, its golden rays kissed the city, dispelling the darkness that had hung over King David's heart for far too long. He stood at the window of his palace, the warmth of the sun against his skin heightened his resolve. Today would mark a turning point in his tumultuous journey, the moment he would finally seek reconciliation with Absalom. The weight of his past mistakes weighed heavily on him, like chains binding him to the very anguish he longed to escape. Yet, even in that burden, a glimmer of hope shimmered, a flicker of light peering through the cracks of despair. With deliberate steps, David prepared himself, mindful that the road ahead would yield both peril and promise. He donned simple robes, a stark contrast to the ornate garments of royalty, allowing him to approach his estranged son as a father rather than a king. Today, he would abandon the crown in pursuit of what was far more vital, his son's heart. As he traversed the streets that felt both familiar and foreign, the citizens of Jerusalem went about their daily lives, seemingly unaware of the inner tempest brewing within their monarch. Murmurs of discontent still lingered in the market squares, but today, David felt a quiet strength growing within him. Each step forward held the weight of his intent, a father reaching out to heal the wounds of separation. The dust kicked up by his sandals whispered secrets of courage, urging him onward. As he approached the outskirts of the city, he found a gathering place where voices clashed, those loyal to Absalom and those still tethered to David's reign. The air crackled with tension, heavy with anticipation. In the middle of the assembly stood Absalom, commanding attention with his striking presence, his fiery spirit unmistakable even in the face of mounting opposition. David's heart ached at the sight of his son, a reflection of both his own glory and the turmoil that had engulfed them. "Father." A voice rang out, piercing through the cacophony of arguments and aspirations. David's eyes locked onto Absalom, whose gaze held a cocktail of emotions: anger, betrayal, vulnerability. "Why have you come here? Is it to speak of fate and loyalty when all I see is your failure?" The murmurs quieted, eyes now casting judgment on the once beloved king standing before them, stripped of the bravado of his power. David's heart leaped into his throat, but in that moment, he realized the depth of his love for Absalom had transcended the turmoil between them. "Son," he replied, his voice steady yet soft, "I come not as your king but as your father. I have wronged you, but it is my greatest desire to mend the rift between us." The weight of his words hung in the air, palpable and raw, revealing the vulnerability that exposed the truth underneath the surface. The throng around them murmured, their curiosity piqued as they stepped closer. David pressed on, his heart pounding but resolute. "You have every right to be angry, Absalom. I have allowed pride and ambition to overshadow love. I see that now. The crown I wore has cast a shadow over the warmth of our bond." For an instant, silence enveloped the crowd, as though the weight of his admission silenced the storm. David could see the flicker of indignation and hurt dancing in Absalom's eyes, yet he seemed momentarily taken aback. "You claim to love, yet your actions tell a different tale. How can I trust that these words aren't just another attempt to placate a throne?" Absalom's voice trembled with frustration, torn between duty and the desire to reconnect. "Trust will not be born from mere words," David responded, feeling the burden of each syllable. "It must be nurtured through actions. I wish to show you that I can listen to the truth of your heart, to the cry for justice that resides within you. If you will allow me, I wish to hear your thoughts and fears, to understand the weight you carry as my son and as a man of this kingdom." A ripple of surprise coursed through the crowd. Absalom's face faltered, revealing a vulnerability David had not realized lingered beneath his son's bravado. You seek to understand? After all that has been lost? Absalom's voice quivered, an unguarded crack in his defenses forming. Do you think it is so simple? No, David replied, the strength of his voice burning through the uncertainty that cloaked him. I know it will take more than words to bridge this divide. Let us walk together, my son, and speak openly of what burdens us both. The path before us may be forged through discomfort, but I believe it can also lead to healing. The energy in the crowd shifted, curiosity weaving its way through the ranks of those gathered. They bore witness not just to the conflict of father and son but to a moment that felt heavier than any Cronan opportunity for redemption born of humility. With guarded resolve, Absalom stepped forward, his gaze locking onto David's with a mixture of reluctance and something deeper, something fragile and powerful. Very well, he said, but know this, it will take every ounce of sincerity you possess to earn back my trust. David felt hope anchor in his heart as they departed from the crowd together, joining the vastness of the landscape ahead. With each step they took, the burgeoning leaves of reconciliation opened a path, the very atmosphere surrounding them seeming to thrum with anticipation. As they walked side by side, sharing windswept silence interspersed with tentative words, the dawn of understanding glimmered anew. They traversed the hills surrounding Jerusalem, a pilgrimage of sorts down a path woven with truths, revelations, and memories long buried. David learned of Absalom's frustrations, his ambition that had once ignited his spirit now burdened with the weight of betrayal. In turn, David shared his own failures, his idolatry of kingship that threatened to eclipse the heart of his son. Minutes transformed into hours, yet the world outside their conversation fell away, as if celestial winds had gathered to shield them from distractions. They forged connections anew amidst stories, heartaches, and dreams yet unreal, a tapestry of truth that beautifully wove their distinct realities into a shared narrative of son and father. In the silence that followed, David found his breath steadying as he felt his heart unburdened for the first time. Absalom, I recognize that I will never be perfect, and my reign has not been without shadows. But I am determined to learn, to grow for the sake of you, for our kingdom, for what remains of our bond. Absalom turned to him, the flicker of warmth reigniting in his eyes. You speak of learning and growth, but it comes at a price, father. Will you be willing to sacrifice ambition for love? David met his son's piercing gaze and felt the weight of the world resting upon his shoulders, the pursuit of crown versus the quest for home. I will, he declared, unwavering in his conviction, his voice echoing against the vastness of the hills. For I now understand it is love, not power, that rules the heart. As their journey continued, David felt the presence of something greater wrapping around him, perhaps grace, perhaps redemption, or even hope. It cradled the fractures within him, reminding him that even in brokenness, a new path could rise from the ashes of despair. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a tapestry of colors across the sky, David knew with certainty that peace would come not just from might, but from love, a love that embraced threads of honesty, humility, and tenderness amidst their shared journey, and in that serenity, the burdens felt lighter than ever before because he understood that true kingship resided in the ability to listen and love unconditionally. David whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, realizing that even in the face of betrayal, the heart could harbor a fierce love capable of extraordinary transformation, and so the story of David and Absalom began anew, a testament written not just in the pages of history, but echoing across the mountains and valleys, where the spirit of redemption thrived. With every stride, they walked the delicate dance between father and son, a journey poised not just to survive, but to rise, a lesson between them etched in faith, forgiveness, and the irrevocable truth that love, even in its most complex forms, always leads home.